And some of these players anyway need to hit that sort of character arc that builds you into being one of the greats, right? Look, the next Ye could be in front of our eyes, and Iton certainly thinks they are, except I'm not sure how much Ye they've been watching recently, because Chamber is not the guy he used to be. We saw it on the previous map, actually. This is the first time that Icebox has appeared on stream, and we're actually getting it back to back instead of the Ascent and Fracture repeat that Kyra and I used to be getting week after week. But some interesting comps, some interesting agents, as we usually do get on the stream here. Anything that immediately stands out to you, Mick?
I mean, obviously, just like the standard of the Viper is going to be a requisite no matter what. You kind of have to have her when it comes around to Icebox, otherwise teams are definitely going to feel like something's a little bit off. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to have that mental going into it, saying it's going to be a free win. But overall, I'm liking the likes of the Fate on the attacking side. I like that kind of start there from 6061. Typically, you're going to be going for a Sova on this map because it feels a lot more versatile, and even then it makes being very, very much more easy for clearing. But I mean, overall, that double initiator without the Sova, without the information of a KO, it's going to be really odd to just kind of be playing off audibles for the most part. But I mean, if they win it out, you know that this team's really got together inside that call.
Yeah, there are a few factors sort of playing together on my mind already, like you mentioned. And while we do have the Fade on one side on the attack, we also have it on the defense. And I think paired up with Stormy on the Raze, you have a lot of potential there for creating some serious problems, at least with utility damage, when you look at the seasoned paint shells and how that could be combined together. Yep. Also, with Iton on the Chamber starting on the attack, it's a little bit more difficult. Of course, the trademark no longer has that global presence anymore, and it's less easy to pick an angle and go for an aggressive early peak and get the same kind of value that you would on the defender's side, I think, as well, it's fair to say. So we'll have to see how that comes into play. But with 2 initiators as well, like you mentioned, there's always a chance that they have, you know, a lot more probing that is able to be done. And with 2 Prowlers and a Trailblazer, there's a lot of angles that you can clear.
Yeah, I mean, everything can be cleared just purely off the utility. It will cost a little bit because those Prowlers and that Blinding Light, I mean, the Guiding Light will also just be free for at least every now and then, but it gives yourself a little bit of an early auto to work off, so it lets you know where exactly people will be on the site, and you already know that, well, Kill for Fun is sitting attack yellow and can't really get out of this situation unless you kill everybody in the meantime.
Oh, it certainly looks like that's what they're doing. I Kill for Fun living up to their name and finding a few of them. Stormy as well. That's their second involvement of the round, and they'll look to make it 3 here to close. They do so. 3 for them, and it even goes back to the first kill that they picked up, really shifting the momentum towards Temple Independent, because they got that kill in towards mid onto Iton. That's then the flank gone, evaporated before the main pushers even come through, and it means that the defenders can just focus their attention on holding the site itself and, yeah, alleviating a lot of those early issues that could have cropped up.
Yeah, and even, I mean, already when you look at the kind of presence across the map, you haven't really figured out too much. You see some teams like to slow things down right there to start getting an idea of where these players are going to be and get an idea of what this default looks like on the defending side, so you know what exactly utility to expect on each side of the map before they really like to make these moves and start unfolding their plans. So an early rendezvous going up towards the back, you know that Chambers will be peeking up towards the top, but this Viper wall is going to be a huge, huge influence if we can see it again and again. But speaking of influence, already, Killer, already just flanking, trying to get to the middle of the map and can find one.
This is a really great pick to be taking. It's now going to be a thorn in the side of Klein Forest, as they've got to deal with a threat that is Killer Ricochet, and they're going to be ricocheting information back to their teammates to go and join them here and crunch the rest of those players that sit in the midst of the site. One of them will be Stormy again, always in the face of danger, and able to dissuade it magnificently there with the Spectre. Throws a paint shells at the feet of their teammate almost, which forces Aspect to take a more aggressive angle, as does Stormy, but kills found ever the same, and it's a 3 versus 3.
Yeah, even then, just barely, because already the kill going off there, a little bit of the TK, very unfortunate for the side of Temple. But when you have absolutely 0 health, technically, I mean, you are one shot across the board. There's not very much you can do. Even then, Anxiety can even find a kill with a shock dart, which is something we've seen to be a lot more difficult ever since those nerfs came through a while back. So we just again and again got to hold ththings down, got to play with that spectrum. But problem is, you got players all over the map, just ready to pinch you at a moment's notice, and even then, the snake bite will go ahead and do enough damage to finish the job. So, I mean, this is huge for Klein Forest. Not only did they win themselves around, not only did they win that off the pistols and barely utilizing any money, but because of that exchange, they get to purchase it around like this, and they get the follow-up right there with Silly Cat hold on to that Spectre.
Yeah, it's a sucker punch in every single sense for Klein Forest right now. And going back to one of the points that you touched on there as you were wrapping up, a lot of that comes down to the control. Not only has Killer Roche found the first opening kill, they found it in such a strong position because then it sends this defender's side into complete disarray when there's nothing for them to hold on in the middle of things. And yeah, allows for that crunch to come through from both ends, which ends up paying off for Klein Forest.
Got to look for some kind of impact here off the start. I mean, you'd like to really fast hits towards this B side, but I mean, with it being so open, you know the player's going to be after looking for this answer immediately, and it's just not going to come out. Or at least it does, just through a wall, unfortunately. That is a massive paint shell coming out from the side.
Yeah, it's off the back of the snake bite as well. Both of those players left vulnerable, so the damage acting for twice as much. Anxiety coming in on the flank, something left unaccounted for with the trademark's absence. Killer Roche finding 2 more kills, but then next in the firing line, position now given away. Silly Cat will claim and has a second molly of their own to throw into the mix and stall this one out as long as possible. Temple Independent nowhere near the spike defuse just yet, as it's only Boz remaining. They'll have to turn their head, tuck tail, and turn as 6061 finishes the job.
That's it. I mean, just another round racked underway from Klein Forest, and so we start to see kind of this entire momentum look to shift to one side or the other, but you can't really freak out in a round like this. Usually you would see the rounds kind of start to equalize a little bit. Klein was expected to win this one regardless, considering even if we did see Temple win that second round, because they would have the guns. They would have a lot more utility. They would have a lot more money on the back of it. Plus that spike plant money would also be there in the back end as a little bit of a safety net. So I mean, continuing forward, this is where things really start to show out for both these squads and say, okay, what exactly is being done here on the field? What are we doing in terms of these game plan setups? And what are we really kind of adjusting for now? Because we've seen a lot of B hits. You kind of have to be ready for that. You see some early aggression and trying to meet it.
Yeah, two different factors at play here. Klein Forest B is working out for them, so if there's nothing wrong with it, keep trying to get that same success. And then also, the conditioning is consequently being built up for what Temple Independent are actually expecting to look for here. And, you know, even though they've got 4 players on the site, they've cleared out all of A, so the information and confirmation should be there in a moment's time.
Just got to find these picks, and even more so, I mean, really go ahead and fight this war of attrition. Spike is even down in the meantime, but yet you're still seeing the majority of these kills, if not every single one of them, go to the side of Klein Forest. I mean, a lot of teams, when you win out fights like these, you're pushing up. You're making sure that you take that control, and even then, because of the hesitancy, you're seeing the flank come through, find a kill, and some good exchanges, I'd say, but you're making the round expensive, but not guaranteed, because it all comes down to anxiety there in the back of the map, only with 10 health now, trying to hold that spot, but, I mean, just set up the cross. One person watch one side, one person watch the other. They're going to have to peek immediately. And they're probably going to die. So there it is, the third Klein Forest. And that's still a couple ultimates on the back of it as well to make this fourth one that much easier if they really want it.
Yeah, Klein Forest put their foot to Temple Independent's neck and then push on down. They don't move it. And right now, that is being felt in the economy situation as well, because we're seeing gaps start to build up and some serious reserves that Klein Forest can fall back on of their own. And ultimates as well starting to cycle in for them too. So you're seeing the Seekers, the Res come through. I think the Seekers could be good for those sort of late round adaptations. But even at that point, we know what the game plan's been for Klein, and it doesn't seem as if it's going to be stopping anytime soon.
No, I mean, just looking at its aggression towards B side, it's worked. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, is what we like to go ahead and say. So, I mean, why not? Keep on hitting that B side. You see these open angles. You see these long courses of engagement, and you know that you have the range advantage with that chamber. I mean, they're going to go ahead and hold down that flank. Make things pretty easy, but that's not even the avenue they're going for. A massive flank, taking a huge detour around the entirety of the map to check every single corner. These rounds are looking like 4v5s, yet Klein Forest still seemingly win them again and again and again. But with that cue to say A side is completely free, I am literally in their spawn. You can just play here uncontested, and we can just play for the setup on the post.
Yeah, the chain of command should be filtering through. The wall going down on B and the fake, of course, to bait out the utility. Extras that you won't be able to now account for in this retake as it comes through, because Itten has bought so much space for their team. Now coming into post, Klein Forest have so many advantages to work with, and one of them is that they still don't know the positioning of this chamber player, who yet again peeks out and finds more value.
I think the props to Stormy there. Had an idea with that judge in hand. Actually could have found that kill very, very easily. Set that flick off. Problem is, it's not going to happen. It's an absolute mow down in the back of the map. I mean, flawless round on the hands of Klein Forest. This is where we not only see that momentum that I talked about earlier because it was an eco round. That wasn't. I mean, these are full rounds that we're seeing now over and over and over again. A little bit of a lapse in judgment of what we're holding in terms of defaults and very early rotations to the side of Temple. I think if that's fixed, the entire round goes completely differently.
Yeah. I think that was an eco from Temple Independent, but it also does just show the adaptability of Klein Forest setup, the fact that they are willing to have Iton linger towards the other side of the map and play for absolutely every single precaution. They bait out so much utility as well from Temple Independent, like I said, in that plant denial, or at least what they were attempting to try and create, and that will then make the retake so much more difficult when you disregard even the positioning that they'd already taken up.
I mean, just once again, is one of those very, very early pushes over towards that B site. I mean, a lot of aggression right on the back of it. But a Nightfall this time, I mean, when you see an ultimate invested, you know that there's going to be a push. I mean, everything is warranted. You have to find this pressure. But even then, when you hear that fight plane going down, the audible going behind it, you make sure you have to press that W key that much faster for the defenders. And they're doing exactly that, finding so much value out of these paint cans. Once again, what is it with Storm and these utility kills?
It just seems to be great combination play with their teammates. First time, it was the snake bite. This time around, I believe it's the seize from that Fade player. And the combination that I was talking about in Agent Select finally rears its not so ugly head, at least if you're Stormy, because it's put them up now to 10 and 5, leading the way in terms of kill impact. And, well, perhaps the rest of Temple Independent could take a leaf out of their book. They seem to be working as a team, and those parts of the machine clambering together to deliver some results here and there, which will keep them in it when they flip over to their attacking side.
Yeah, I mean, just able to go ahead and at least maintain a little bit of control here. I mean, I always mention that you need to find at least 3, especially on Icebox, where we actually saw kind of the 9-3 curse exist because we saw how doable these comebacks were when you're putting that score line. That, I mean, life isn't all that difficult, but you have to make sure to reach at least that. So, I mean, being locked out at 1 for the longest time, only winning a pistol, is a little concerning, but showing that you finally win a rifle round, that you can make these exchanges. Sure, they were on the back of ultimates, but you're not always going to have that luxury, and even then, you may be able to squeak something out every now and then, especially with those Paint King kills that we saw, which obviously has been a double each time. So that's something we got to keep our eyes out for. Already, the Tour de Force in the back of the map, AK looking for already that initial blood, and Temple looking to hold things down, but Aspect is in a really bad spot with that.
It is caught in a difficult situation, but the Hunter's Fury should maybe push some players into their crosshairs. It doesn't seem to work out for their favor, however. Instead, it just leans Klein Forest onto the scent, and they're able to pick up the trail. They are named after a forest. You'd think that they would be good hunter-gatherers in many different ways, and Iton is able to gather yet another frag for themselves as it leaves Anxiety in a 1 versus 4. But this isn't anxiety-inducing. I don't know what is, as Killer O'Shea will close it out with yet another, and order is restored if you're Klein Forest as they get back on track with another round win.
Yeah, it's just good looking across the board here for the side of Klein Forest and Temple. I mean, I've liked the attempts they've had so far. Anxiety did a lot in that round with that Hunter's Fury, but even the problem is, once again, and we mentioned those comms, I'll talk about how Klein Forest, that's going to be really their kind of core foundation for their unit, considering that both their initiators 9 times out of 10 aren't going to reveal anything. They're going to probably get shut down. You're going to have to hear those audibles either from gunfire to go ahead and kill the hunt, or from that guiding light, letting you know with the character audible that Sky gives of where these players may be. And even then, you're not quite sure who's there. And I mean, besides the defaults, so you get an idea with initiative. So, I mean, looking at what they have to provide, there's plenty there. But it seems like Temple, oddly enough, the ones that actually have a level of recon with that drone, with that dart, they're kind of playing off the back of that. They're not really executing off of it, which I think they got plenty of time to go ahead and figure out how to do. But in a map like this on Icebox, you're going to get stuffed out before you even have a chance if you don't really get things together soon.
We see Stormy just lining up the paint shells here as well, and you can already see what the game plan is, to be playing off of their teammate and get those util combos coming through. There's the seize, the nade over the top. Is it going to be enough? Not quite. The placement not picture perfect, but still the 2 players involved with the utility are able to find gun kills of their own. Killer O'Shea swings one back. In fact, they double up alongside Eton. Powers combined to deliver the blow, but Stormy's still alive here and has those paint shells back online to press the players further back as the stick should start to come through.
Just something in the post plan, silly cat. It's a little bit bad to be in situations like this. Util for that post play, but when you got a rifle like that, you can be able to get so much work done regardless. Problem is, Hastic already went it away. You didn't have that bubble on top of the spike. You didn't have another snake bite in the back of your pocket to be using. So, I mean, you're not going to delay the inevitable. It feels like seemingly any longer as you do see Temple hitting that 3-round spike to go ahead and guarantee themselves on the board. And still with only 2 rounds of a difference between them and Klein, you're kind of happy with this standing so far. I mean, as you mentioned, they have the potential. We've seen the setups. We've seen the game plan start to unravel here, but I think they can get themselves over. Just a couple gunfights here and there really set them apart.
I really like that Temple Independent understand why it is exactly they've picked into this comp as well, and it's not just a blind choice as some of these games can often feel like, but they are trying to play to those strengths, play to those combinations of utility, and even when it doesn't pan out entirely, it helps shake the balance, give them a little bit of workable room to make their way in towards the site. And yeah, just playing off site here towards Rafters again, just incredibly deep on the setup. You can see that ideas are ingrained as to how they want to approach this, and Boss finds the first. It's Itten on the flank down again.
Yeah, just, I mean, massive picks there towards the middle of the map. We see that pressure again and again and again, and it always feels like a little bit of a 50-50, but this time around, Klein Force has, sure, lost that initial blood, but because of that, they have found so much pressure and so much presence overall on that A side of the map, and even with that spike plane going down, Viper's still on the back of it. Some teams would like to go ahead and probably call it here, but consider that Temple Independent doesn't have full buys across the board. They say, why not just go ahead and attempt it, because we don't really have too much to lose.
Anxiety just hovering above AK, but it's almost a one-way where you can see the feet just poking through the tip of the cloud there on the Viper's pit as we see an ultimate invested, but it turns to great effect, makes the retake that much more difficult for Temple Independent, especially when you consider as well that one of those initiators, I Kill for Fun, had been sending out prowlers with absolutely no care in the world and didn't have too much util left to actually work with by the time it had been deployed. Anxiety as well, just wide on the dart and then succumbing to a similar fate. Full buy now here for the attacking team as well, and it seems as if they're restoring the balance. Even if Temple Independent are chipping away round after round, Klein Forest should come out of the half with an advantage.
Yeah, Klein Forest, I mean, sitting in a point like this, you're kind of expecting this, but if this does somehow become a thrifty, you're expecting Temple Independent to make this extensive. None of their rounds have been an absolute stomp so far, besides, let's say, maybe those early rounds of 2 and 3 where you saw the economy just be absolutely washed. But, I mean, at a point like this now, you have 3 ultimates to work off of, so you can make this feasible, quite honestly, considering everything handed to you. But you just have to make sure to get the right lineup. The Storm, every single time have we've seen get something crazy out of it with the Marshall. More importantly with those paint cans, but I think right here, that's just going to be more than enough.
And when Inton isn't the first to die, their value in the late round seems to be absolutely huge, as we've seen the entry found already onto Temple Independent. The weapon's just not here for them as well, so you are sort of throwing yourself headfirst into the guillotine in many ways. The meat grinder and crossfire is established here. Players looking to move through. I Kill for Fun first to drop. Itten should be getting more, but just runs out of bullets. The chamber empty, but in the end, the rest of the team come through and Klein Forest get away. Only 2 players left remaining. Decent damage by Temple Independent, but with the snowball already built up and how strong the attacking side economy is as well, I doubt that we're going to see any change in that for the rest of this half.
No, I'm definitely looking at probably a 7-5, 8-4. I mean, we're not, I don't, 9-3 kind of feasible here, but I think Temple, they have themselves at least a round. Considering in a point like this, you're kind of forcing on everything just to make sure you can secure this one and find yourself that 4th, knowing that the next one's going to feel inevitable. And you know that Klein Force is going to have that bias, so you just kind of lock it in here as best you can. But the Resurrection showstopper, more importantly, I mean, that's going to be something I would love to see. Because with Stormy and how much damage they've done with just paint cans alone, imagine what that ultimate could do so long as you get everything to line up for you. So with that Snake Viper's Pit, I think honestly you can put that towards the A site, but you don't want to do that. Already an initial kill out, you don't really have too much pressure being put on towards the site. And even then Anxiety has the read on Eaton, but it's terrible timing there. Just gets picked off the back of it.
Perhaps reminded by a teammate on the radar that something had flashed up on their monitor and that was a call that they needed to turn around. Either that or a delayed response, whichever way you look at it. Boz invests the Resurrect on what will be one of the next 2 buy rounds that Temple Independent have left on this half. And already Iton, from this lurk position that we've seen many times, has positioned themselves very nicely outside of the spawn gate and cuts down 2, leaving I Kill for Fun in a 1 versus 4.
They're right there for off there in the middle of the map. I mean, we've seen that lurk what feels like 3 times now, and I mean, E10 is second on the leaderboard for their team respectively off that alone. Hey, you can't let this. Well, now first after that round, I mean, Killer was holding things down. Actually, that one player on site just winning out these gunfights again and again and again. You can tell they like these skirmishes, but Ethan just is one of that lurker that gets the job done, and you can't let those start to slip through your fingers. Even then, you know they're going to be flanking now. You know something else is going to be about, and even if they're not somewhere else in the map, they're probably in the back. They're probably sitting towards that spawn with that rendezvous, kind of acting as that safety net for themselves and looking for those free placements. So we do see Temple have another round to work with. Not really the best guns in the world, but they get the ultimates behind it. But the problem is, in a round like this, Klein does too. The Tour de Force already brought out. That Resurrection fully available to be popped here. And that Showstopper being the one thing that we're really expecting to be that tone setter here.
Yeah, you look at the invest as well. Like I was saying, Temple Independent only had a couple of full buys left, and the last 1.5 was in the previous round. Klein Forest already getting the opening kill that they need, but still continuing to encircle this Viper's Pit. And it was the undoing of Temple Independent previous, but we'll have to see how it works for them here. Brilliant use of the Seekers to pluck Aspect from within the toxins, and just like that, the site is completely theirs, shrouded by Klein Forest as each time a tree pops up, the darkness continues to grow around Temple Independent as they feel more and more lonely in that position. 9-3 is the half, and a very strong showing from Klein Forest.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a big statement. I mean, the 9-3 something, as I mentioned, considering that round where you had the full buy and the ultimates behind it that we didn't even get a chance to see, that we probably wouldn't be looking at this. But when you look at the start of the map, when you saw the amount of momentum that Klein Force was building, then it could be expected. So, I mean, all things considered, they got what they've earned, and even then better get what they deserve. And flipping things to the opposite side, now playing on the defense, you don't have that lurkability anymore, but even then, I mean, everybody's just doing their job. Their post plant was just as strong as their initial hits. Problem is they just weren't as fast because, well, you got to wait for the timer compared to you just pressing the W key. And I think the way they hold these angles is going to be very, very deadly. So that's why we see people already just investing this time out initially to say, this is going to be difficult. It's going to be very, very rough, but you have to go ahead and just give some leniency to these first couple rounds and just make them as expensive as possible.
This is an interesting one as well, I think it's fair to say, Mick, because in terms of what the HSEL legacy is, it's not one built upon timeouts. If you're getting stomped, you're getting stomped. And I think it's quite nice, actually, that we see Temple Independent invest one here. But when does it become a point of too little, too late? We'll have to see if this can inject anything, cause a resurgence, a cause for any kind of change, I think, because right now Klein Forest are closing in on the finish line. I think all it's realistically going to take is them to find a pistol around here and convert the anti-eco, which we didn't see Temple Independent able to do so on their defenders half, to make this one looking a little bit too far out of reach.
Yeah, so long as they can do that and find those initial 2 back-to-back rather than have that little bit of a switch up and that equilibrium, the 1-1, I think they have this game secured. I mean, there's really nothing else to it. When you look at that round 11, it makes things very difficult, especially to go ahead and win 8 in a row. Klein Force will typically have enough rounds by then for every single player to save up an ultimate and just kind of throw all the ultimates in the world at your singular problem, and you'll probably find a round off the back of that. So you can't really let that happen too much because that guarantees obviously a match point. But Temple Independent, they can find these first 2. This is always when things start to arise. If you win the pistol round, then the backup, and then hopefully a third, these 9-3s always really start to hit the back of your mind, and you really just can't let it squeeze by. So a little bit of a close plant. I think it's going to break the wall there. Actually, no. It's able to go ahead, you turn around, don't get that spike a little bit too close graphically, and nothing really breaks. Full security here for this on the Temple as they get that spike down.
Yeah, spike is down for Temple Independent. They went for a conservative wall on A, but Klein Forest read the fake like an absolute book. Cover to cover, they've already arrived on B and were well prepared to deal with this issue, and that they do. Silly Cat even finds the flank of Stormy. It realizes to nothing. The storm becomes weathered, and this is plain sailing if you are Klein Forest right now. They found double digits with the pistol round claimed. Like you said, convert the anti-eco here as you're expected to do so. We'll have to see how healthy the bonus could be in perspective afterwards, but you fully favor them now to just slingshot this one home. Anything catch your eye really there? That sounded, you know, I don't know what the best way to describe that would be, but you certainly sound impressed by something.
Yeah, it's just that replay, man. I mean, just watching it over and over again. I mean, pistol rounds like
Beefy
that.
one tap.
Yeah, it's those players. Honestly, I mean, as a player myself, obviously, I mean, not the highest in the leaderboard. I mean, not the best, and not even really just renowned or on the leaderboard. I mean, I'm not even immortal here, but I mean, it's just so dope to watch some players feel themselves on pistol rounds. I mean, he's a special kind of player that you see do those things, and even then get those mid-air headshots in there.
The noise you made sounded like you'd taken a bite out of a 5-star meal, and Itten already eating away, taking a few chunks out of the Temple Independent players that are left here standing. Prowler trying to decay that wall somewhat, and Silly Cat will finish the job, but Temple Independent have their backs against the wall here. There's a safe exit if they want to rotate and create some space elsewhere, maybe even cut noise, but Klein Forest completely denying the opportunity to do so, pressing every advantage they have, and even the spike is snake-bited by their own player here, as I Kill for Fun will be chased to the ends of the earth and eventually gobbled up by Silly Cat to make it flawless.
A flawless round on the back of barely any guns actually bought on top of that. I mean, we see a bunch of sheriffs, which can actually follow up into a rifle bind in this round, as you already see a ton going for there before we get to replay. So considering, I mean, what this team is doing, and just kind of that momentum we saw starting to build here, it's not off the back of a full buy on the second round and then a little bit of a reciprocation. It is just absolute full unanimous purchases and aggression coming through from the side here on the Klein Force, which is very concerning, showing that you're now reaching these end stages of the game, and the team that even then won those first 2 rounds has another basically full buy on the back of it. Meanwhile, Temple's struggling to even get full armor for 2 of their players, which makes sure that a Phantom is just as strong as a Vandal, if not even better in those situations. So things are really problematic here, but AK able to hold things down with the Bulldog. It's points like that where you're saying, man, what can we do?
What can't Klein Forest do? I think if there was any player you wanted to have a Vandal right there, it would have been Stormy, but they are first in and first out of this equation. Like a lamb to the slaughter. Klein Forest are so clean about this. Systematically, they proceed on both ends, and perhaps it's ill-advised. Silly Cat overextends somewhat, and now it gives a way back in for Temple Independent. They'll have to wait at least 20 seconds to get the healing orb back online if Anxiety is to be on fighting form. And Itten has already taken the initiative of claiming back as much space as possible and should be finding the first here at the very least. Boz just using the wall to reclaim the spike very nicely in this 1 versus 3.
You got to make sure that, I mean, every single player gets covered out in the meantime. You know that players are going to be swinging you, but maybe not as just kind of freely as we saw there. But regardless, though, Klein Force comes out with the round there, looking at a match point on the board. And, I mean, already when you're sitting in that point, you're seeing those guns that are available, and even the spike being co-controllable at the side of Klein Force, that's even worse situation to be sitting in. We've seen it now for the past 2 rounds where Temple goes on a massive rendezvous mission. They never really disabandon the spike. They never really go anywhere else on the map. They like to work around that thing. They know, and they have a sense of the objective, but sometimes it's just kind of better to leave it alone. Rendezvous, figure things out, come up with a plan, move around the map, see what's open, just like Eton does again and again and again, and then come up with a different game plan later. But the problem is they just don't have that luxury right here. This is the last round before we really have any kind of second hopes, and it's got to be a flawless one at that.
I guess you could say flawless, but anything will do here, I think, for Temple Independent, at least in terms of getting around on the board. And Itten with a quick disengage with a rendezvous will trade out that pick that they lost initially from Stormy, who is still alive and can be the difference maker for them here. But Silly Cat has stepped up their game themselves throughout the duration of this map, as has every single name on the Klein Forest side, which right now seems to be running rampant. Aspect dealing with that initial threat. Stormy also here as well, looking to reposition as the snakebite comes in, and this could aid them in their assault, but Itten will finish the job with 4 kills of their own. The spike already halved, hitting the gritty, styling on them at this point. Another 13-3 on Icebox.
Yeah, just a massive lead there already with that first half going in the way. You saw Klein Force and what they did there on that second half, just kind of carrying things over that 3-0 start, and it just diminishes the economy, and there's just nothing